Hi guys, how's it going? In today's video, we're going to examine and explain the kind of hocus pocus world of business politics, clever marketing and profit maximization by the supermarkets. And more importantly, how the impact of shelf shortages will hit the poor and I also think the middle classes. Now, as you're all probably aware, the food and drinks industry has warned that food shortages would become a permanent feature of everyday life in the UK. But this video is going to peel back the layers that expose just how precarious things are and asks how high are the stakes of this Brexit madness to really bringing down the social structure of the entire UK that we've become so accustomed to for the last 50 years. Now, before we do that, I have to say, can you hit the subscribe and the bell thingy beside the like doodah, and please use the other thingy me bob, the share button, just to annoy your mates, okay? So let's go. Now, supermarkets need small companies to keep pressure on the big brands. That's why supermarkets like to sell their own brand whenever possible, something that Marks and Sparks in particular have mastered better than almost all the others. Now, other supermarkets will appear to give the small guy producer a chance, not for the benefit of the small guy or even for the consumer, but to keep the pressure on the big brands so as to protect the supermarket's bottom line. In short, they don't want to be forced to keep all their eggs in one small margin basket, okay? Now, Marks and Sparks, for example, and others such as Sainsbury's, Waitrose, those guys, will have the same product coming from many sources, but under their own brand, thus keeping their price low and their sales price high or wherever they want to set it. But the supply chain fiasco has screwed up the basic food sourcing and supply modus operandi, and the consumers are going to pay for it, no question, okay? In order to understand what's going to happen, not what may happen, what is going to happen, we need to bear in mind how the supermarket industry works. When we heard recently the reports from Marks and Sparks boss on how the Northern Ireland protocol was damaging business, it was splashed over the mainstream media like a glitter bomb. And just like a glitter bomb, no matter how well you brush the crap off, no matter how many times you try to wash it off, some of it still sticks. But what's interesting here was their motivation. Marks and Sparks pointed this out in November 2020. Now, the rest of us pointed it out in November 2016, but they pointed out there was going to be a problem. Now, do you think their concerns was for the well-being of the consumers? Really? Well, it wasn't. It isn't, and it never will be anything to do with social concerns. Nothing will ever override the concerns of the bottom line. You see, the issue with supermarkets is that they are unable to get their chosen product lines to the market in order for them to generate profit. And it's that simple, nothing more complicated than that. For example, we all know that Marks and Sparks provide their ready meals and pre-packed rather this and that, and which, let's face it, are convenient, are nice, but they're bloody expensive. And those products are one of their biggest earners, percentage-wise. It also allows them to shop around amongst the various packers to get the very best price because it's manufactured under their own brand, so they can shop around. However, that route to maximizing profit has been savaged, and that hurts their bottom line. So if you grasp that point, the next will be much easier to understand. Supermarkets operate very, very simply. They, like all businesses, strive to maximize their profit. End of story. Maximum profit for least amount of input. That's the way it works. Shelf space, along with product and price distribution, are what drives that train to profit. And it works like this. Supermarkets offer shelf space to companies that wish to sell their goods. The first thing they'll be hit with, those new companies, is what is termed in our world hello money. Okay? In other words, if your product is accepted, okay, the supplier sometimes has to pay even upfront for that shelf space, or what we might call in our world rental, because you never own it. Marks and Sparks will negotiate what is known as a retrospective discount. This means that as the product sells, Marks and Sparks will get a better price no matter the sales price. Okay, even if the sales price goes up, Marks and Sparks will still get a better purchasing price. Okay, this retro is often applied to goods sold even before the target was reached. So Marks and Sparks, and not just Marks and Sparks, all supermarkets will also ask, and sometimes insist, to be honest with you, that the supplier partakes in marketing promotion activities, whereby their product will be pushed through marketing leaflets, either electronically or through in-store activity. Okay, they pay for that. To give you an example, when you walk down an aisle of a supermarket and you see a flag or an indicator, something sticking out from the shelf that's highlighting a product ahead of other products on the shelf and thereby catching your eye, the supplier is paying for that privilege, and some of it is very expensive. Okay, shelf space allocation is at a premium, and it's carefully monitored by the supermarkets and the suppliers, far more than it is by the consumers, by the way. The products that provide the biggest margin are generally located at eye level and will generally have more shelf space in width-wise than other products that have less of a margin. Okay? Have you ever noticed, generally speaking, that you find non-essential items such as biscuits, chocolates, etc. are located near the checkout counters? The shelf space near the checkout counters are more valuable than those at the back of the store because they deliver more profit to the supermarkets and more sales to the suppliers. Have you ever noticed that you will generally find that the non-essential items such as biscuits and chocolates, that sort of stuff, are located near the checkout counters? I'm not talking about the point of sale right at the counters. I'm talking about just back where you're queuing up with your trolley. The shelf space near the checkout counters are more valuable than those at the back of the store because they deliver more profit to the supermarket and, incidentally, to the suppliers. Okay? More sales to the suppliers means more profit. But the supermarkets are always trying to get the upper hand on their suppliers, especially the big brands. Okay? For example, like Diageo, if they decided to pull the plug on the supermarkets, they didn't accept the terms and conditions, those supermarkets would no longer be able to sell brands like Guinness, Kilkenny, Bailey's, Budweiser's, Scotch whiskies, loads of them, Smirnoff vodka, or gins, Gordon, Gilbey's, there's loads of them. But they're not essential items, so no big deal. However, if you apply this type of vacancy on shelves to brands such as Unilever or Kellogg's, now you've got a different problem, because that's going to have a massive impact on the basic products, consumer awareness, satisfaction, and consumer spending. Okay? Now, however, during this crisis, the supermarkets are on the back foot. You see, when you're driving the highway crisis, rather driving on the highways or byways for that matter, throughout the UK, you will see the big brands plastered across those large trucks. Okay? You see, they don't depend, generally speaking, on outside haulage facilities. They have their own. And the upshot of this is that the big brands can get the goods to the shelves more reliably than the smaller ones. But now the likes of the supermarkets are screwed, and so are the consumers, right? You see, because the supply chain screw up caused by the numpty brigade, the big brands can and will put pressure on the supermarket chains. That pressure has and is going to further intensify, and the consumer, along with the supermarket, are going to suffer. They're the ones going to pay the price here. Let's not be under any illusion. Food prices have not risen substantially. They have risen, but not substantially. But that's only because the annual negotiations have not fully kicked in, as the big players try to understand how strong their position is. And every day we go forward, their position becomes stronger. That weakens the supermarket. That puts the price up. That's what's happening. When demand is greater than supply, ladies and gentlemen, prices go up, and that's an absolute fact. What we're seeing in today's market is not getting better, it's getting worse. And why? Well, because the supermarket warehouses were full, but as the economy opened up again, they're becoming depleted. Okay? But the double whammy is that as the demand starts to rise for non-food items, such as toys, entertainment equipment, household goods, the strain on the logistics industry is going to increase exponentially as the haulage companies will increase their price. They'll be less cooperative than they were in the past. They'll introduce shorter payment terms and demand that those are met on time, every time. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what a real credit crunch is, and it's going to hit fast. It's already starting to hit, and it won't take much time to filter down to the prices. At the end of the day, that's the consumer, okay? This is going to hit, actually, this has already destroyed the just-in-time delivery system. That has been a game changer for supermarkets and the associated industry in terms of storage requirements and in terms of worker allocation. Traditionally, shelves in supermarkets were often packed by companies known as merchandisers, who would either take the delivery of goods from the supermarket's own store and then place them on the shelves, or they would collect from the supplier, deliver and stack at a predetermined time and in the allocated shelf space. You see, these guys just didn't arrive with a delivery and start humping the stuff down shelves and put it up when they wanted to. They had a time allocation. This requires precision, reliability, and a continuity of key players within that chain. If a link breaks, the whole thing falls apart. And that's what has happened. To make things worse, the supermarkets themselves no longer have a fallback position of using their own staff because they are also in short supply. And if they complain to the suppliers, they'll be met with either, that's not our fault, or it's, you know, as is happening right now, if you don't want it, there are others that do, okay? The supermarkets simply do not and will not have any choice but to fill the empty shelves with whatever they can get their hands on at whatever prices they can extract from the consumer in order to maintain their margins. But it's not over. This means that basic foodstuffs that don't command a higher margin will be replaced with similar goods of higher margins, like sprouts versus cabbage or shallots versus onions, you know, that sort of stuff. Minor changes that allows the supermarket to raise the price. No matter what, supermarkets are built on X amount of profit per cubic meter because it's vertical space and horizontal space, okay? And I'll leave you with this, just to break it down. If a supermarket shelf is earning $100 per day, but because Supplier play hardball or the logistics company play hardball, that earner reduces to $80 per day. Do you think the supermarket is going to be forced to raise its prices on other products or take the loss themselves? What do you think they're going to do? Just take it on the chin? No, they're going to pass it on to the consumers. You, I, and everybody else. Now, for the rich, doesn't make any difference if they pay an extra 50p for a cabbage. But to the people who are poor, it does make a difference. When you step that up, as things become progressively worse, that's going to start hitting the middle market. I think that's going to happen around, it's already started to happen, it'll happen around the end of November and through December. But by January and February, when people have blown their budgets, that January is going to be a real wake-up call for the middle classes when they realize they're paying, and they could well be paying, easily, 20% or more for the normal grocery shopping they used to do every week. Thanks for listening. See you on the flip side. Take care.